Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to be focusing on talking to women during this program. But gentlemen, don't turn it off, because you all have women in your lives, whether it's your wives, your coworkers, your daughters, that you need to learn this for, and be passing it on, because it's very important information. And it's coming from another one of my C-Suite Network members. I always love it when I get to interview people from C-Suite. So please join me in welcoming Kate Rosenberg to our program today. Welcome, Kate. How are you?
Hi, Deb. Thank you. I am doing great. I'm excited to be here and to speak to your audience today and to be talking to a fellow C-Suite member. So I'm doing great.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this. So Kate Rosenberg is the founder and CEO of Shattered Glass Coaching and the author of Authentic Success, a guide for ambitious women to build aligned careers and lives. Kate is an award-winning career coach who helps professional women break through career barriers and land jobs where they're valued, respected, well-compensated, and fulfilled. Through her signature glass ceiling breakthrough method, Kate has helped over 500 women land new roles in half the industry standard time. She has spoken at events in 5 countries and 16 states and has been recognized as a top career coach in San Diego for four consecutive years. So again, Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. So excited to be here today.
Cool. Well, I always like to ask my guests, how did you get to where you are today? So tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I'm a career coach, although I say I've been coaching for decades. Probably I was coaching as a kid and I didn't even know it. I started my career immediately after college, actually as a classroom teacher. I did Teach for America, TFA, and I was in a tiny little rural community in South Louisiana. And it's interesting because going through that process, working as a teacher for 4th graders in a low-income community, I gained a lot of skills as a coach that I still use today. I was only a teacher for 2 years. After those 2 years, I went back into corporate and I was doing corporate training and development, kind of in the L&D space. And that's where I learned a lot more about coaching in the corporate sense. And then I decided to start something on my own. I had noticed a lot of women who I worked with, both peers above me, below me, all across organizations. A lot of the women were struggling with similar challenges, ones that I struggled with myself. Things like imposter syndrome, things like not knowing how to advocate for themselves, advocate for a promotion, not having what they needed in terms of growing their leadership abilities. And I saw these things over and over and decided I wanted to do something about it. So I started Shattered Glass Coaching. And as you mentioned, I'm a career coach and I work primarily with women in corporate, many of whom are making career transitions. So I do work with a lot of job seekers or a lot of women who are looking to perhaps shift from one industry into another, making some sort of pivot. And a lot of the coaching that I deliver it's 50-50, half mindset and confidence coaching, right? Having the internal belief in yourself, that root problem, overcoming that so that you can do what you want to do tactically, because that's the other half is having the right strategy, the right tactics to get to where you want to be in your career. And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years in Shattered Glass Coaching. I've coached over 500 women now to make successful career transitions. And I do like to brag, but I usually do it in half the industry standard time. So 3 months rather than 6 to 7 months.
Cool. I love it. And it's funny. I haven't been in, I'm putting this in my air quotes, right, corporate America for 20 years. But as I was preparing for this program, it brought back bad memories, right? Of, wanting to get ahead, wanting to take on leadership roles. and not being able to. Now, and I mean, 20 years ago things were a little different, but it still was one of those things that I know still happens a lot today. Otherwise, we would have a lot more women who are leaders. And I think it's just one of those things where we don't we don't always know what to do, how to proceed. You mentioned things like imposter syndrome. I grew up being told, "Oh, little girls don't do that." And now I'm a baby boomer. And I, because I remember, oh, when I told them I was probably sixth grade or so, I want to be an attorney. Oh, that was really, oh, no, no, little girls don't do that. And I did decide not to do that, but just, for different reasons. But, it really, and I hate that it is still hard for women to get ahead. And I love that you are helping women to do this. And I was looking at your book, which again is called Authentic Success, a guide for ambitious women to build. Yep, there we go, Vanna. A guide for ambitious women to build aligned careers and lives. And my first thought was, how does someone even know what authentic success is for them?
That's such a great question. And that is literally chapter 1 of the book, is defining what is authentic success to you. And I tell a story at the opening of the book about how when I was 8 years old, I was living in Houston, Texas, and my parents would do what every family did around Christmas time or the holidays. We would pack into the car and we would drive to the most affluent neighborhood in all of Houston to go look at the holiday lights in their yards. And I would see these perfectly manicured lawns, these beautiful light shows, these snowmen and Santas. And my parents always said, these are the $1 million homes.
Right.
That's why they're so nice and beautiful. And that's why we come to look at them. And in my 8-year-old brain, I would look at these homes and I would think to myself, I want to live in $1 million home someday.
What do I need to do?
That's success. That's how I'll know that I've made it, right? To me, to 8-year-old Kate, that was the definition of success. A lot of things have changed since then, right? That was 30 years ago. And $1 million home, the definition of that has changed. And my definition of success has changed. But the point there is that success is subjective. And everyone gets to create their own meaning of success, their own definition of success.
Right.
And that's what I walk through in chapter 1 of the book. And one of the main ways that you can create your vision of success is by knowing what is important to you in terms of your core values. And I think all too often we know, like, these are the things that I think are important. These are the things that matter to me. But we don't often enough reflect on, these are my core values, and I'm going to build an intentional life and career that aligns with these core values.
Right.
And when you don't do that, you live a misaligned life where maybe you are successful, but something feels off. Or you're doing really great in your career and making great money, but you're unfulfilled. It all goes back to your core values, and your core values should be the foundation of your authentic success, because ultimately authentic success is achieving the things you want to achieve in a way that feels genuine and aligned. And that's aligned with your goals, of course, but it's also aligned with your values and aligned with your happiness, which only you can determine, nobody else.
Right. And of course, the hardest part about that is we all know what society expects. And it's not just society in general, it's our parents, our peers, our friends, our siblings, our spouses, our kids, our whatever. And what we want gets lost in that shuffle.
Absolutely. We've been sold a lie about success. Society really does. It tells you, follow these 3 steps and you'll be successful. Get the job, get the promotion, make the salary, find the spouse, and then you'll have made it. And that's just not true. And it's a lie. And everyone has their opinion about what success is. Your boss has an opinion, your parents have expectations, social media has a highlight reel, but all of that is just noise, and it's getting in the way of your authentic success and what truly would be successful to you. And it's kind of cool. In chapter 1 of the book, I have an exercise, because there are actual exercises where you can take a pen and write in the book and complete them. And I call it a core. I know, I know. And I have an exercise called the core values bracket.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like a March Madness
Mhm.
sports bracket
Mhm.
where you line up your values and you have them compete against each other until you have your
Mhm.
final top
Mhm.
two values.
Mhm.
And these are the core values that should lay the foundation for what success means to you.
Right.
And I find a lot of people, when they do this exercise, they look at their final two values and they say, yes, these things are important to me. But when I look at my life or my career, I'm not living these values on a daily basis. Or the way I'm measuring my success is not by these values.
Right.
And so that's where we have to flip it. And we have to say, okay, what can I be doing in my career and in my work every single day so I am living my values? And that's the path to success, authentic success.
Right. And I'm assuming that the core value kind of always stays the same. Other definitions change. I mean, your initial success might be, I want to graduate with honors. And that's going to be, part of that. I want to raise healthy, happy kids. All of those things, but the core value stays the same.
Exactly. Because as you're in different phases of life, of course, things are going to change. Your situation is going to change. And, I used to think $1 million home was the epitome of success. Now I live in San Diego, California, where $1 million
They're all
is the
$1 million
median home
homes.
price, right? Right. So it makes sense that it changes. But you're right. Those core values and the things that you hold as tenets in your life generally stay pretty much the same. They might evolve slightly, but you mentioned graduating from college with honors. You might value hard work, having a hard work ethic.
Right.
You might value education, right? You might value persistence. Those are things that you need to value in order to graduate with honors. And those could show up later in your life when it comes to raising kids or being a leader in your career. The value stays the same, although other things in your context and situation might change as time goes on, of course.
Right. And I love that you talk about the fact that it is different for every single person. I have shared this on this podcast before, way back when I had my 10-year high school reunion. I was, of course, in charge, right? Big surprise. Now, we had 32 in the graduating class. I went to a very small school. But I was working with someone on it, and, you always do awards and things, right? Came the furthest, whatever. And so the person said, oh, well, we have to do one for who is the most successful. And I said, what? And I would have been, 28 years old then. And and she said, oh yeah, we have to do, who is the most successful? And I said, and how on earth do you determine that? Well, of course, for her, there was only one indicator: money. Like you were saying, the $1 million house. And I said, well, okay, first of all, how are we going to know? I mean, someone might live in a trailer and still be a millionaire, or they might be overextended and, all sorts of things. And I said, how do we not know that the person who stays home every day with their 4 kids doesn't consider themselves the most successful? And so I talked her out of that, right? Because, there was no way that we could determine what it was. And but so we always do think, and we get on the judgy hats, right? Right? Oh, she's staying home with the 4 kids. That might be the most important thing in the world to her. And that's just absolutely fabulous, because to her, she is successful, or he, right? I was talking to a Mr. Dad the other day, right? He stays home, and so, or Mr. Mom, I guess it would be, right? But yeah, we can't define that, and we've got to get our judgy hats off.
Right. Because when you say who's the most successful, it's, well, whose definition of success? And too many people are making the mistake of outsourcing their level of success to external sources, whether it's society or a boss or financial, when really we should be measuring our success based on what success means to us.
Right.
And a couple years ago, one of the things that inspired me to write this book was I had a client, and she was in her mid 40s, and she was a tech executive and very successful on paper. She had a great job title, made good money, was very well respected in her industry. But on our very first coaching call, she said, Kate, I need you to help me figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Oh, I love it.
And I think we've all had that moment, right? But and what a lot of clients tell me is that I've just been doing whatever the next right step is. I've been climbing the corporate ladder, taking this promotion, my salary's increasing. I've just been doing my thing. But now I feel unfulfilled. I don't enjoy my work anymore. Something feels off. I don't even know what I want to do. And it's because she was living someone else's definition of success. She wasn't living her own.
Right.
And that's what inspired me to write this book is you need to be living your own definition of success, not other people's, not society's, or not your boss's, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and of course the media, the media and social media and all of those things, they're the ones waving those flags, right? Now, I have never watched The Housewives of wherever. The commercials just do me in. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But we look at things like that, and we always have. I remember many years ago, we bought, me and my husband bought a new car. Well, my dad could not, no, he had to go buy a new car. We couldn't have a new car, and him not. My mother was not a happy camper. Now they got a new car, but yeah, I mean, for him, but I think we all do. We do the comparison game.
Yeah.
And I think, and part of it is imposter syndrome, things like that. But we usually come up short in whatever it is. They've got better kids. They've got a better house. But of course, so many times we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
And that's why your vision of success has to be the only measure. You can't measure yourself against someone else's success because, as you said, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And your values and what you consider success is the starting point. And I have a lot of clients who come to me and say they're unhappy in their current careers, in their current jobs. And when we dive into why aren't you happy? Many times, not all the time, but many times it goes back to a values mismatch that the values of their current company or at their current role or the things that are happening in their current role are not in alignment with their values. And they want to create a job or a career or go to a company that matches their values because otherwise it's really easy to burn out, to be exhausted, to be miserable in your job. So making intentional decisions from a place of your values and your own vision of success and not what your neighbor Paula down the street is doing or what that person on social media is doing is ultimately going to be what brings you a greater sense of fulfillment, joy, and I think success. Because when you are feeling like you're in alignment and you're feeling happier, you'll be more successful. I've seen it time and time again. It's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. You just can't do that. And when you're in a place where you can leverage your strengths, leverage your values, and feel more fulfilled, you're going to be more successful and have a more lucrative career as well.
Right. But we've got the little voice, right? It's there on our shoulder. And it's our inner critic, right? And originally it was probably my mother, right? But yeah, and so how the heck do we tell that? Because part of it is some of what that inner critic is doing is healthy, right? It's but how do we tell it? Stop it. Go away. Shut up. And like I said, there are times where we want to pay attention to it. It is kind of the fear factor thing. Your inner critic might say, "Don't touch that. That's hot." Right? But how do we tell that inner critic, "Shut up"?
I think the first step is being aware of that inner critic when it does pop up, because research shows we have around 6,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of them are negative, 80%, and we don't even realize it. So our brain is kind of programming us for failure to have all of these negative thoughts going through our minds, that inner critic. I think the first step is, again, just being aware of it and noticing when the inner critic, that voice on your shoulder in the back of your head, comes up and calling it out, saying, there's the inner critic.
Right.
And a lot of my clients like to personify their inner critic. They name them things like Regina George or Cruella. or that pitch in my head. And the truth is that's what it is. It's not actually you. It's these junk thoughts, this head trash that's silently sabotaging you. And it could have come from any number of places, right? The things you were told by your parents when you were a kid, things that you've heard on social media, or from negative people in your life, or things that you've read, or experiences that you've had in the past that you just hang on to. So that voice could be coming from any number of places. But instead of just letting it keep talking to you and running on autopilot and letting it hold you back, step number one, be aware of it and call it out in the moment. If you're having a day where that voice is loud, don't just let it keep talking to you. Pause, call it out, and say, that's Cruella talking, or that's my inner critic talking, and separate it from yourself. Give yourself some separation to know that that's not actually you.
Right.
And it is a junk thought. It's not true. And from there, asking yourself, what is more true, more positive, and more real, and start to unravel it. Because once you take yourself away from it and call it out as not being true or not being valid, you can start to really unravel that negative thought, that inner critic, and come up with some new sentences, thoughts, or statements that are more true or that are more empowering, and use them in the moment. That self-talk is so powerful. And it really is an important part of that mindset work, is the way that you talk to yourself. Are you telling yourself, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm too old, too young, whatever it is? And are you letting that run through your mind all day, every day? Or are you saying, that's not true because of blank?
Right.
And it's not easy because we're programmed to believe these negative thoughts. It's been happening since childhood, as you said.
Right.
And the only way you can overcome those is to be aware of them and reframe them.
Right. Right. And of course, it is the people who are around you too. If they're saying, oh, I don't know, Kate, I don't think you can do that, you're not smart enough, or whatever it is, okay, they need to go away too. Again, sometimes they're wanting to protect us, from bad things happening to us and all of those. Yeah. And that's okay. But there are also those who, because usually it's their own self-esteem issue, right? They're going to knock you down just because. And there are just people who are going to do that. Well, ignore them, make them go away, whatever it is, and don't put up with it. And what, I mean, I had somebody one time on Facebook, and I didn't even know the person. They were a friend of a friend, right? And they were posting, and I was talking about something, and this person who I didn't know said, "You are an idiot." And I thought, well, put on you. I mean, and part of it helped because I had no idea who he was. And so I could have cared less.
Sure.
But, we do have those people. And I had the conversation with somebody about this earlier this week because I was kind of having a little confrontation going back with somebody. And I told somebody, I said, I wonder if that person understands I don't care what their opinion is of me. Now, of course, that little voice was still chirping at me. But yeah, it really did come down to, she can think what she wants. It's not gonna matter to me in the slightest.
Exactly. Because it's easy to listen to what other people have to say and their opinions and internalize it yourself.
Right.
But when you can learn to drown out that chatter and that noise and focus on what you value and what you think is important, it makes it a lot easier to care less. And I'll tell you another quick client story, Deb. I had a client who, she was a chiropractor, and she is a first-generation American. Her parents are from Japan. And her entire childhood, only child, her parents drilled in her, you need to be the best academically.
Right.
Top,
I mean, that's very much a
of
culture.
It's a cultural thing. And she graduated valedictorian from high school. She always made great grades. She was top of her class. Same thing in chiropractic school. Made great grades, graduated with honors. Well, here she was in her 30s running her chiropractor business. And any time that anything went wrong in her business, which things always go wrong in business, she would come down on herself and say, I'm not good enough. I'm not in the top 1% of all chiropractors. I'm not the best. I'm failing. Because she had internalized that from her childhood,
Right.
which as a kid and a first generation American, it was valuable for her to push herself and to want to succeed academically. So it did serve her at that time. But as an adult running a business, it was no longer serving her.
Right.
And she had to recognize that yes, it was valid at one time, but not anymore. Now it's just a junk thought in my brain that's bringing me down, and it's not serving me and helping me to be the best chiropractor. It's just making me negative and having a bad attitude every single day. So we work to reframe her mindset around that. But like you said, recognizing where these thoughts are coming from and being aware about it helps you navigate them so that you can choose to care less about what other people are saying or to rewrite the narrative in your own mind.
Right. Yeah, and my favorite T-shirt that I have, I got because my neighbor has one. But it's a good reason. It says, "You are enough," and and that really is. We are enough. We don't have to be more. We just have to be us. And and part of the reason I love the shirt, it was a fundraiser for suicide prevention. And for some reason we think of enough as a negative. Well, we should want to be more, right? No, you are enough. And that
Enough is enough. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because usually when I have the shirt on, somebody will comment, but yeah, we are enough. We don't have to be. Now, do we still need goals? Do we still need dreams? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are enough. But somewhere good enough became synonymous with average. And,
right. The bare minimum.
Right.
Right. One thing I see with a lot of women in business and in corporate with the women who I work with is this mindset or this inner critic around visibility.
Right.
And what I mean is by putting yourself out there to be visible for others, whether that's in terms of networking or brand visibility, showing up on social media, being on a podcast or media appearance. And a lot of women I talk to are reluctant to put themselves out there and be visible.
Right.
And I do think it stems from past experiences where maybe they were visible and they got embarrassed or they were shamed or they were told that they didn't perform well. And so now they have this, I call it a visibility wound, where they don't want to put themselves out there because that's scary and it's not safe to be visible, to have conversations with strangers, to do the public speaking or whatever it is. So they listen to that inner critic that says it's safe for you to not be visible.
Right.
Not realizing
that it was safe, but that's not a good thing.
Exactly. Not realizing that visibility, while it feels uncomfortable and it feels unsafe, is the exact thing that would fuel that next level of success or connection or influence or whatever it is.
Right. I know because I've seen it on one of my report cards. When you actually still got physical report cards and they filled them in, it said, "Will not be quiet." Big surprise again, right? But of course there's good and bad, right? There were times where I probably was jibber jabbering when I should have been paying attention. And all of those various things. But I was never the little shrinking violet in the corner. And it did get me noticed, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But the teacher meant it as a negative. My mom went, "Okay." Because that was her. She was the person who stood out and spoke her mind and did those things. So she actually went, "Oh, cool." But
well, and isn't it interesting that now jibber jabbering is your superpower?
Right.
It's your secret sauce. It's what you get to do every day better than most people on this planet. And if you would listen to that teacher, that external voice telling you what was a good thing or what was a bad thing, who knows? But thankfully, you had your mom and your spirit to say, like, no, I'm going to jibber jabber on. And it's led you to where you are now by harnessing that. And That's authentic success,
Mhm,
Deb.
mhm, right. And we do pick up on other people, right? I'm a guest on podcasts quite a bit also. And I was interviewed by this wonderful woman who she was and she I mean her podcast is and I when she said she wanted to be on I said it was about how to be an introvert. I'm like, "Really? You get that? No." Um and and but it was probably one of the best interviews I've ever done because her persona, it came through, right? She was very quiet. She thought about the answers. And so it was, it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because I immediately thought, oh, I can't talk over top of her. I need to tone it back. But it really was a wonderful interview. She certainly didn't say, oh, you need to dial it back or whatever. I mean, she knew that I am as extroverted as you can get. But yeah, it was just one of those where I thought, "Oh, okay, this is one where I need to dial it back." And it really was what I thought was one of the better interviews I've done.
When she was showing up authentically as her
Right.
true self,
Mhm,
which is
mhm,
probably what made it so
mhm.
powerful, she
Right.
was talking about
Mhm,
being an introvert and
mhm,
the power of being an
mhm,
introvert and using her
mhm,
voice in her
mhm.
own
Right.
style. And I
Mhm,
always think that it's so obvious
mhm,
when someone's just genuine
mhm,
personality and
mhm,
authenticity is
mhm,
coming through
mhm,
because it's authentic and
mhm,
humans
mhm.
resonate with
Right.
authenticity,
Mhm,
especially these days
mhm,
with AI everywhere.
mhm, mhm,
Authenticity is huge.
mhm,
And it sounds like she
mhm.
mastered that. And that's why
Right.
it was such a great interview.
Right. And
Yeah.
I wanted to respect her. I mean, that I think was probably the other thing was I wanted, to show my respect by, letting her take the lead and all that. And yeah, I mean, it really was and when we were done and just doing the chit chat afterwards, I told her, I said, yeah, this was it was not hard for me and it wasn't a challenge, but it was something that just kind of came naturally was to dial back my personality to match what she was doing.
I think that's a really good skill to have
Mhm.
though, is you're not changing your
Right.
personality or
Mhm.
changing who you are,
Mhm. Mhm.
but you're tailoring
Mhm.
and adapting
Mhm.
just your communication and how you're showing
Mhm.
up to meet somebody else
Mhm.
where they are.
Right.
And I think that's a skill that in business and in
Mhm.
corporate is
Mhm.
vital.
Mhm.
Not my way or the highway.
Mhm.
I'm just going to
Mhm.
talk like this
Mhm.
and communicate like this and hope
Mhm.
everyone else can understand.
Mhm.
But knowing
Mhm.
when to tweak the way
Mhm.
that you're showing up
Mhm.
or make just those like small little
Mhm.
changes
Mhm.
just so you and the other
Right.
person are speaking
Mhm.
the same language, you're on
Mhm.
the same page and you're
Mhm.
better connecting. And I think that relationships grow
Mhm.
stronger when you
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
So not changing who
Mhm.
you are, but just knowing
Mhm.
how to adapt for
Mhm.
different people
Mhm.
is something that is so crucial.
Mhm. Right. Well, you mentioned the big bugaboo in the room, AI, right?
I did.
And it's one of those. Now, I use AI a lot. Part of it is because I do think I've gotten a little lazy. It can just do it for me. Now, I always look at what it's doing. I mean, sometimes I do word for word what it has done. I love the graphic capabilities that have, now we don't have, five fingers and two extra thumbs and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Um, you know, and but that I had somebody say not long ago, well, if you're using AI, how can you still say you're authentic? So what do you say to that?
Mm. I think it depends on how you're using
Okay.
AI.
Okay.
If you're using AI to speak for you, like
Mm-hmm.
like a ventriloquist,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then AI might be
Mm-hmm.
stealing your voice and
Right.
it might not be
Mm-hmm.
authentic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using AI more as a microphone
Mm-hmm.
to amplify your
Mm-hmm.
voice, to help you with ideas as a
Mm-hmm.
thought partner, you can still be
Mm-hmm.
authentic.
Right.
So I do think that there is a lot, it's a fine line
Mm-hmm.
that if AI is, if you're over relying
Mm-hmm.
on AI, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes more inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're using it as a tool, it still can be authentic.
Right.
And when I first started writing my book, it was in 2024. And this was when ChatGPT was first
Mm-hmm.
becoming a
Mm-hmm.
real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't planning on writing about AI at all in
Mm-hmm.
my book. but I was seeing ChatGPT this
Mhm.
and LLM that and Claude this, right? And I was noticing on social media, and I'm sure you've had this experience where you're just scrolling on your
Mhm.
feed and all the posts look and sound the same.
Right. Yes, they use the same and they're always glowing, right? We were tremendously happy. Okay, nobody's tremendously happy. And yeah, when I get those, I like take them out. Like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. The same phrases, the same
Mhm,
language,
mhm,
the same
mhm,
sentence structure, the same
mhm,
emojis, everything.
mhm,
And again, this was back in
mhm,
24 when it was a
mhm,
little bit newer,
mhm,
but I was like, oh my
mhm,
gosh, we're doomed. Everyone is starting to sound the same. Like
mhm,
chat
mhm,
has taken over your personality.
mhm,
And that's when I realized that authenticity is what
mhm,
was lacking and that I had to write a
mhm,
chapter on staying authentically human in our AI driven
mhm,
world. And it's using AI for
mhm,
those things that help you be more productive,
mhm,
more
mhm,
efficient. And you said that you love it for like its graphic
mhm,
capabilities. I agree. I use
mhm,
AI for creating my
mhm,
slide decks for
mhm,
me because that's my
mhm,
purgatory is creating
mhm,
slide decks.
mhm. Right. But
So
you're
of
still
course,
telling it, here's what I want it to do.
exactly.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm,
And I did have a friend tell me,
mhm,
this was a couple years
mhm,
ago, that she got a text message
mhm,
from a friend she'd been out of
mhm,
communication with that was multiple paragraphs long and was apologizing for something. And it was very thoughtful.
mhm.
And then at the end of the text, it said, would you like me to adjust the tone or language for your specific situation?
She forgot to take that out when she cut and pasted.
Exactly.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm,
And to me, that
mhm,
that is the perfect example
mhm.
of
Right.
AI stealing your
Mhm,
voice and stealing your
mhm,
authenticity. And it's kind of
mhm,
ironic because the tools that we're
mhm,
using because we want to
mhm,
sound more polished and we want
mhm,
to sound more articulate are
mhm,
actually stealing our
mhm. Right.
authenticity.
Right. And to me, it's exactly what you're saying. It's a tool. I mean, there's no difference than if I say, "Hey, will you help me write a speech? Will you, talking to a person." I remember years ago, back when I was in corporate America, I worked for an insurance company, very large insurance company. And we had the capability through our phone system that one person could record a message and it went to every single person there. And so we sold a policy that was huge. I mean, huge, huge, huge. And the CEO, and I was the head of corporate communications. The CEO contacted me and he said, "I need you to write me a script," because he knew he couldn't do this, right? He knew his strengths, and this was not it. And he said, "I need you to write me the script so that I can leave a message, congratulating everybody." And I mean, he really wanted to congratulate the entire company, right? Not just one or two people. He said, "I need you to write that script." So I assigned it to somebody who worked for me. And what I didn't do was tell her, "I need to review it first." Because it had never occurred to me, right? And so she wrote it in her voice, as opposed to I'm writing this for the CEO. And so she
Mhm.
just, sends it off in an email to him, and I get this phone call. Now it's really funny because our phone system had caller ID, right? And so it had his name. I thought, oh dear. And like anytime the CEO calls, right, you answer
You're like, oh,
differently. Yes, yeah. And so I said, "This is Deborah." And he doesn't say hello. He says, "Fire her." And I'm thinking, "Oh." And I said, "Need a little more context." you know? And he told me, he said, "She wrote this like you would write a text message. It had no punctuation. Like yeah,
no,
like you, she had done as the letter U. I mean, oh
no.
yeah, oh yeah. And I said, "Okay, I should have reviewed it." But and I said, "But first of all, I'm not going to fire her." I said, "We're going to use this as a teaching moment." And
Mhm.
and so I told her, I said, "You were writing for the CEO of a multi-million dollar corporation." I said, "You needed to write it in his voice." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to have you redo it. I want to see it before you send it to him." And of course she did really well. But it's really funny because, I'm working with Chat GPT today, who has named itself Stan. Um and I'm like, "Okay." And it's getting a little weird because it's very first person. I like this. I like that you do that and all this. And so I was writing something and it tells me Stan does. Okay, here's the draft. Now you need to put some Deb into it. And I was like, oh, or if I said, okay, you know my writing well enough, put some Deb into it yourself. But yeah, so it's still our voice that we need to be getting out there. Now, if it's a 2 cents in social media post, I might not care, right? But if it's something more important, and I mean, I get, I've been on the air a long time doing this. I get probably 5 pitches a day from people who want to be on the podcast. What's driving me nuts are the AI ones. I get at least 2 a day from 2 totally different people that are the exact same.
Really?
And it's because they've put into whatever platform they're using, hey, write a pitch for me to
Write
go on a
me a
podcast.
pitch for, yeah.
And then they don't even pay attention because, and when I get these duplicates now, I ignore them. And that's bad.
Right.
Because they could really be great people. But not if they're, and I don't mind if they have a booker who is contacted. I have a booker to get me on podcasts, right?
Right.
I'm perfectly fine with that. But they send these AI things. They don't pay attention because I used to respond and say, okay, well, you sound like a great guest. Be happy to put you on the schedule. The next day I get just bumping this up into your mailbox. Then the next day, are you not interested? And then the next day, this is the last time I'm going to reach out to you. And then I will get one final one that says, really just checking in one last time. And I kid you not, they are word for word. And like I said, I don't pay attention, even though they might be fabulous, because they did not personalize it to say, hey, Deb, listen to your podcast. Or it will say, listen to your podcast. And it's the exact same thing every time.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's what people really, as we're saying, we're losing that authenticity.
It's the same structure and the same formula, and it's robotic.
Right.
And it doesn't build any trust. It makes you feel like you're not communicating with a real human behind the screen, which this is what this podcast is all about. And it is drowning that authenticity out, which is unfortunate. And I see a similar thing happening with my clients who are job seekers and they're applying for jobs.
Oh, yes.
People are leveraging AI tools to help them with their resume and their cover letter.
Here's the job description. What do I say?
Exactly. And I see dozens of resumes every single week. And it is so obvious which ones have been AI generated because it has all the same type of language, the same verbiage, and it just looks like a plug and play formula. And there's new research out now that shows that 80% of hiring managers can look at a resume and within 5 seconds tell if it's AI generated and it's gone. Over half the time they're auto rejecting it.
And again, they might be the best candidate, but they blew it.
Exactly. And so it's much more now about having an authentic personal brand, using your voice in your application materials, showing them that you're not relying on AI. And this doesn't mean that you don't use AI at all. Like you, I also use AI daily, but I think we need to be using AI more as a thought partner and a tool rather than having it do the work for us. So one of my favorite prompts that I love to tell clients to use if they are applying for a job is to go into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever LLM they're using and say, you are a hiring manager in the blank industry who looks at 200 resumes daily. Here's the job description. Here is my resume. Is my resume keyword optimized? Is anything missing? What would make you want to interview me versus automatically reject me? Be brutally honest about what's working and what's not. And of course, we in business all know that the better the input you give the AI, the better the output. But I like that example of that prompt because you're having AI act as a hiring manager to give you feedback. You're not having it do the work for you and take your authenticity and your voice out of it. It's really just proofreading, giving you feedback, giving you points to think about so that you can make those adjustments yourself and you don't fall into the trap of having a robot generated slop resume. So that's how I'm seeing it show up with a lot of job seekers right now.
Right. And AI is getting better and better. It is able to make, things like that. I was, talking to somebody and they said, they might have AI write it, but and this person said, but I put typos in.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Now, folks, if it's for a job, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Right.
Because, as somebody who would be reviewing something like that, if there are typos in your resume and or your cover letter or whatever they now do, nope, that's gone. you know, but yeah, but I thought it was funny that they did that to make it seem like it was not AI generated.
Well, and I think you make a good point, though, is that sometimes communication that is overly polished
Mm-hmm.
or perfectly rehearsed or scripted can come across as inauthentic, whether it was written by ChatGPT or not. So even if someone, if, and I know there's listeners out here that do this, you spend like 30 minutes rewriting one email because you want it to sound perfect, or you're showing up for a job interview and you've rehearsed exactly what you're going to say 90 times and it sounds scripted.
Right.
People don't connect with that because it's not authentic. It's too polished. And I think people want authentic communication, not sloppy, not messy or unprofessional, but they don't necessarily need to see this perfect, shiny version of you. They want the real you.
Right. Podcasting is a great example of that. We are having a conversation. We go, we go, we fumble over our words. We change subjects in mid-sentence, right?
Yes.
I had somebody who wanted to hire me because he wanted to do a podcast. So he wanted me to teach him how to do this. And it was going to be he and another gentleman. It was not an interview. It was two of them talking about something. The same two people every time. So not an interview type format. They were just going to be the industry experts talking about whatever. And he said, now we will write the script and we will memorize it. And I went, duh. and obviously I did not end up working for this person because I said, that's a television program that is scripted. And even now, I mean, I get the biggest kick out of when they screw up on TV and they did it, right? My favorite things were Carol Burnett when they would crack each other up and they couldn't finish, right? They were just laughing so hard because, Tim Conway said something that got him going. But yeah, if I want scripted, then I will turn to something like that. Podcasts are conversations. And he ended up, as far as I know, he never even launched the podcast because he wanted it and it had to be scripted. It had to be, and he did a couple and nobody liked him, right?
Right.
Because it's a conversation. That's why I like, that, now we get to do this on Zoom. There's, other platforms, but because I get to see you. When I started, it was all, actually when I started, I was in a radio station and the person was across the table from me. So that was great fun. And then I moved to recording it just audio. And now you still got some of the flavor of what was going on and it was still a conversation, but it's when we see each other that we have
facial
the best conversation. Yep.
Right. And non-verbal body cues and body language and gestures, all of that. Absolutely. And I think back to my early days starting business, and I'm sure many people can relate. I thought I did have to sound really professional.
Right.
And I look at some of the emails that I wrote that I sent out to my email audience, and I just want to cringe at them because they're like, dear valued subscribers, today I'm writing to talk to you about the important topic of work-life balance. And I'm like, ooh, it's so boring and cringe. And now when I'm a lot more seasoned and feel a lot more comfortable using my authentic voice and not having to put on some front, and I notice people respond a lot better to it because it's more human, it's more genuine. And I think we're seeing this a lot these days is with leaders having a little bit of vulnerability and authenticity and not being perfect is actually working in their favor. I know Brene Brown's done a lot of research on this, that vulnerability and authenticity are a leadership advantage. And I remember this from my corporate days. Like I had a boss that I really respected her. And the organization was having some financial difficulties and they had to cut some people from our team. Rough, but the way that she handled it, I could see that
Mhm.
this was a decision that
Right.
weighed heavily on
Mhm.
her. And
Mhm.
she was like,
Mhm.
this is why this decision is being made. She explained it to us. She was like, I'm not happy about this. I think she even had tears in her eyes at the
Mhm.
time. And some people
Mhm.
might have viewed that as unprofessional,
Mhm.
but it was real
Mhm.
and it was vulnerable. And
Mhm.
I respected her more
Mhm.
because of that.
Right.
So I
Mhm.
think that authenticity and that vulnerability is a
Mhm.
leadership advantage.
Mhm.
And if you're keeping it
Mhm.
professional, it's okay to show some of
Mhm.
yourself
Mhm.
and how you're showing up
Mhm.
at work and
Mhm.
how you're leading others.
Right. Right. And for the gentleman, you might not get teary, but
Yeah.
you can still show empathy, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing. And it doesn't mean that you're not strong, that you're not the boss, that you're not in control and in charge. It just means that you get that maybe you just totally messed up somebody's life, you know, and
Mm.
and
Yeah.
that's the thing. And I've, certainly been in places where, people have lost their jobs. And
Yes.
when the person doing that firing was just this cold slate. It was like, ew. But when they were like, "We're really sorry. We're
Yeah.
sorry." And now, I mean, sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But, it was one of those where, again, you have to be authentic. And now, there are obviously times when they are glad that person is going. you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and so maybe you send somebody else to do the termination, or
Right.
the trend now that I hate is, especially if you're doing large numbers, is you get a text message or an email. Oh no!
And then you're locked out of all of your
Right?
accounts. You can never
Yes.
access it again. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
horrible
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
taking a dig at your
Mm-hmm.
employee's
Right.
dignity.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's so disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a much more human
Mm-hmm.
way to do it.
Right.
It's terrible because, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, it's happening in
Mm-hmm.
mass these
Right.
days. And so,
Mhm. Well, and I get that they might not be able to meet with 2,000 people, and so they
right,
do have to send a text message or, an email. But there are, again, ways to do it. So it doesn't
right.
sound like, well, too bad, so sad. you know.
Hmm.
Um,
Exactly,
mhm,
exactly. And there's ways to, when
mhm,
that does have to happen,
mhm,
to support the
mhm,
employees who you're letting
mhm,
go and
mhm.
taking care of them so
Right.
that when they
Mhm.
leave you,
Right.
it's not
Mhm,
the worst
mhm,
experience of their
mhm.
lives and it's
Right.
not traumatic.
Mhm,
It's like they do
mhm,
have some runway.
mhm,
They feel
mhm.
like it wasn't a personal
Right.
decision that was just cold.
Right.
So I'm seeing that a lot, and it's
Mhm.
unfortunate how many companies are having to
Right.
do that these
Oh
days.
yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who she worked for the federal government. And
Mm,
when several months ago they went through the huge layoffs.
yeah.
She texts me and she says, "Well, I think I've lost my job." And I went, "Oh,
You
I'm
think?
I'm sorry." She said, "Yep, couldn't log in." And actually it turned out they turned everybody's off. And and then yeah, but yeah, she was like, "Yeah, I couldn't access my computer." And I was like, "Oh
Wow.
dear." And I mean, it was everybody knew that there were big layoffs coming, and so it wasn't a huge thing. But yeah, it was like, "Yeah, I couldn't get into my computer today." And I mean, there's certainly been times where it's like, "Yeah, my key card didn't work," and things like that. But still, you have I always tell people, put yourself in their shoes. Yeah, and we
Hmm.
probably
Hmm.
all gotten fired, gotten laid off,
Sure.
things like
Sure.
that. Or, we've made the preemptive strike. But
Yep.
but yeah, just think about what's going through their mind. What are we going to say to them? Even if it is something that is, hey, yeah, you've been stealing from us. There are still things that you can say to make it not quite so painful.
Being
And yeah,
thoughtful and
yeah,
intentional about it
yeah,
rather than
yeah.
just doing
Hmm.
what you're
Yeah.
told. And
Hmm.
it's interesting. I was also just thinking about how post COVID, when everyone went
Hmm.
remote, everything was
Hmm.
virtual, everyone was like happy to
Hmm.
be working from
Hmm.
home. And that's what people
Hmm.
really, really wanted.
Right.
But I'm not sure about you, but
Hmm.
now a lot of people I'm talking to are craving
Yes. Hmm.
human connection,
Hmm.
in-person
Hmm.
community,
Hmm.
in-person
Hmm.
events.
Right.
They want to
Hmm.
actually connect
Hmm.
with a real
Hmm.
human, not with a
Hmm.
screen in
Right.
between them.
Hmm.
And so I think now with that craving that we're
Hmm.
seeing, all over the world,
Mhm.
it's more important than ever to
Mhm.
treat people
Mhm.
with that human decency and
Right.
that authentic
Mhm.
kindness. And that's what people are
Mhm.
wanting. And I think that companies as well on a corporate level
Mhm.
need to keep that in mind about their workforce
Mhm.
as well, is
Mhm.
that people want that human connection and that
Mhm.
in-person
Right.
community. And
Mhm.
what are companies doing to
Mhm.
build those
Mhm.
communities and to foster
Mhm.
that sense of
Right.
connection? Because those
Mhm.
will be the
Mhm.
companies that have
Mhm.
the best retention
Right.
rates and serving
Mhm.
their customers
Mhm.
and their employees the
Mhm.
best in these next couple of
Right.
years, I think.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Kate, we are almost at the top of the hour. This has been so much fun, and I definitely think we need to continue this conversation because one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is why telling someone, well, just follow your passion is not really the best career advice. So we'll have you on again, but we all hear that, right? Well, why aren't you following your passion? Follow your passion. And I'm like, I don't know what my passion is, and my passion is underwater basket weaving. How's right? But yeah, so we will definitely have you on again. But we'll have links to your website and your LinkedIn profile and for the book. But for people who go, okay, Kate, I need help. How do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
Absolutely. So my coaching company is Shattered Glass Coaching, shatteredglasscoaching.com.
Mhm.
And I provide career coaching for women who are going through career transitions. So whether you're actively job searching, looking for a completely new role at a new company, or if you're looking to make a more subtle shift in your career, I can work with you on everything from your positioning and personal branding, your resume and your LinkedIn profile, as well as things like job interview prep and salary negotiation prep as well. So you can find that on my website or on LinkedIn. And then, of course, click the link in the show notes to buy my book, Authentic Success, on Amazon or wherever you get your books.
Cool. I love it. I love it. Yeah, we definitely need to talk about career stuff. Salary negotiation. Oi. Oi. How many times have you said, "Oh, well, I'll accept whatever." And they go, "Ha, yeah, I would have offered you 20,000 more," right? Um,
Women, especially. Yep.
yeah. Yeah. Or we take the first offer because, oi. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll
Because
we'll
I'm so
definitely have
desperate for
you on again.
something, I'm just going to take it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that happens as a consultant also. Hey, they're going
Yeah.
to offer to pay X amount, and we take it because we have to, or
Yeah.
but yeah, it is definitely a trend more for women, and so I would love to have you on again to
Okay.
talk about that. So yeah, so we will do that. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yes. Stop hiding who you are and start leveraging who you are, because at the end of the day, your superpower is being you.
I love it. Short, sweet, and really important information. Well, I'm Deb Creer. As she said, she is the founder and CEO of Shattered Glass Coaching and an author. I've been having so much fun talking with Kate Rosenberg. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.